Hi students, this is a lecture today that's going to round out chapter 1. We have one topic left to discuss from chapter 1 and also introduce some concepts from chapter 2, which is all about culture. So you see behind me a screenshot of the board after I finished with this discussion with my classes earlier today. I took a screenshot of the board, so I wanted you to have it so that you could kind of see what's going along, what's going on here, or the board notes that face-to-face students got when they were in classroom with me. So like I said, we are going to talk about one topic that's dangling from chapter 1 that's going to link over into our chapter 2 discussion and actually be a focus, something that we're going to try to work on for ourselves over the course of this entire semester. So that topic is found on page 12. It's one section in the biography section of the textbook. There's one section on a fellow named Max Weber. He's a very famous sociologist. I'm not going to ask you to memorize his name, but you will accidentally memorize his name between now and the end of the semester because we're going to talk about him so often in this introductory sociology class. The thing that we're going to talk about right now from page 12 is the concept of value-free sociology. You might notice that on this screen here, I have the word value-free as being the goal. So right there in the center, I've got this value-free concept. I didn't come up with that. A very famous thinker named Max Weber came up with that. Value-free is the concept that in order to be an effective sociologist, an effective social scientist, we as individuals have to put aside our personal opinions, our personal beliefs, our emotional reactions, our personal feelings about something. We have to put those very human reactions aside and try to look at the data that we collect using the scientific method that we use in sociology. We have to look at that data that we collect from a value-free point of view. So the value word here is not talking about something's worth, like a dollar has value. The value here is talking about somebody's beliefs, what they think of as good versus evil, or right versus wrong, what they think of as, being beautiful or ugly, those kinds of ideas that exist in a culture on a macro scale, but also within individuals. We have to try to put those things aside so that we can interpret data in a more objective way. So if you all did the social media component of the Safe Haven Baby Box assignment that you worked on last week and part of this week, then you might have noticed that people tend to respond very quickly. They might not know anything about the situation yet. They definitely don't think about it on a macro scale. They put it in a micro scale context for the most part, and probably a lot of the comments that you got, if you went the social media route with that assignment, probably a lot of the comments that you got had a lot of value judgments included in them. So sociology, in order to be the most objective, in order to have reliable conclusions that you arrive upon when you apply the sociological perspectives to the information that you've gathered, in order to do that, we have to step away from our own personal feelings, opinions, and beliefs and try to look at culture, to try to look at the issue we're studying from an objective point of view. When we do that and we overlay those three theoretical perspectives on top of it, functionalism, conflict perspective, or symbolic interactionism, we can come up with three very different approaches. Or combinations of those, can come up with very different approaches, but we should take great care to withdraw from our own personal beliefs, convictions, and that kind of thing. So that's what value-free sociology is all about. Now, Max Weber, the guy I told you came up with this concept, you spell his name W-E-B-E-R. So when you look on page 12 in your textbook, find that section, Max Weber. He talked about the importance of value-free sociology, but also he talked about how difficult it is to do that. I mean, think about this for a second. How easy or difficult is it for us to take our own ideas about what's right or wrong, or take our own ideas about what's good and beautiful, take those ideas out of it and not apply our biases to a situation? It's not easy to do. You have to have years and years of training. You have to intellectually take yourself away from your thoughts and feelings about something in order to look at a situation objectively. It's not easy to do, and no one can do it perfectly. It's really hard. So even though Max Weber called for us all to have value-free conclusions about the data that we collect and analyze in sociology, in the same breath, he also said how difficult it is for us to actually achieve a value-free position because we're human. So we're calling for value-free judgment, or lack thereof, lack of judgment. But at the same time, you're not going to be entirely able to do that. So sociologists have a whole bunch of people look at their work, check our research models. We have a lot of input from a lot of colleagues. We aren't an island. We don't live in a silo, so that we don't get input from other people. You have to constantly put in place a systematic way of conducting your scientific inquiry so that you're constantly checking up on yourself to try to keep a pulse to make sure you're not putting your own value judgments into the way you word a question or the way you interpret information from that question. And you need a lot of help from colleagues about that. Because even though none of us can be 100% value free, the way I impose my personal opinion on something might be opposite of the way you impose your personal opinion on something. And so we would be really good at checking each other's work, because you can call me on my issues and I can call you on your issues, and we help each other that way. It's a friendly kind of calling out, where we need to know that the data that we're looking at, but also the way that we interpret that data once we have it, it gives us valid, reliable conclusions. Value-free is the way to go. When at all possible. It's very difficult. Okay, and so the rest of this board, what you see on the board here, the definition of culture, which comes from chapter 2, and the fact that culture differs from place to place, these kinds of issues are really key foundational knowledge to have for an introductory sociology class, because we're studying people and we're studying society, but culture is the glue that holds people together, not just at one snapshot in time, like today all across the nation, but over time. So the time that Grandpa was in his 20s and the time now that you are in your 20s, the world has changed significantly from then until now, but there's still continuity. There's still a glue that holds Grandpa's generation together with your generation. And so culture is that fabric, or culture is that glue that holds people together over time and, in one place. Okay, so look at the definition of culture here. Culture is the total of all knowledge. Look how long this definition is. Knowledge, ideas, beliefs, language, traditions, all of these different kinds of things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, are included in culture. Okay, culture is shared by people in a population. So you'll see that people share this. You can see that in the definition. People share their ideas, beliefs, language, traditions, norms, values, etc., all of those things that are in that definition. Culture is absolutely shared among many people in the population, if not all. Also, culture is passed from one generation to the next. So this implies that when you and I are born, we don't come with a pre-programmed app that gives us some of the bouncing off points that we need so that the rest of culture falls in place. That's not how human beings work. When we're born, we know nothing. We do nothing naturally except eat and sleep and pee and poop. I mean, we do those things naturally. But the way, the rituals, the customs, the tradition surrounding the things that we eat, for instance, to use one of those examples, are very different from one place to the next in the world. For instance, I have a friend from China, and when she and I cook together, she has a really huge set of chopsticks. So when I say chopsticks, you can see what I'm talking about in your mind. You see that material items are part of the definition of culture. So chopsticks, we know what they are, but they're kind of a foreign thing in our culture. They're much more common now than they were, say, 20 years ago. And probably many of you are thinking, I know how to eat with chopsticks, but your mother did not put them in your hand as early as 6 months old or however old you were able to start eating. So she did, that's the utensil that she used. And so when we cook together, she has these huge chopsticks. They're a good 5 times bigger than the little ones that come from the sushi counter in Kroger or something. So, and she would use these things for everything. I mean, she would pick up a whole chicken, she'd pick up a roast, she'd take stuff out of the frying pan that I would have normally taken out with like a spatula or something. She would use these chopsticks to do that. So she has knowledge and ideas about how to use these material items to go about, in her ritualistic way, how to cook, which didn't follow mine. Like my tools are different than that. So all of these components, I've got this long list separated by commas in this definition, and all these parts of culture are all intertwined and connected to each other, and they create the glue that holds people together because we have this shared understanding of reality. And also we pass to our little ones when we spend time raising them and teaching them how to be. They're a little bit different than us, maybe sometimes a lot different than us, but they're part of our previous ideas, our previous beliefs, our previous knowledge, language, rituals, etc. We pass those on from one generation to the next. So none of us are born knowing any of this, but you pretty much start learning from birth. So when you are an infant, you pretty much start learning right away from birth. And in chapter 3, we're going to look at this. The learning process that I'm talking about is called socialization, and that is one of our key vocabulary words from chapter 3 when we get to that. But a brand new newborn baby does start to learn from the moment that they're born, and since we don't have a memory of that, we don't have a memory of that process, a lot of times we say that some of the things we do and think and our habits that we have come naturally. Notice that I'm putting air quotes around the word naturally because like we said earlier, there are some things that we do naturally, like eat, sleep, pee, and poop. But the customs and the traditions, the behaviors associated with those things are very different from one place to the next. Blowing your nose, for instance. There's lots of ways you can clean snot out of your nose, and there are some cultures that don't even bother cleaning snot out of their nose. It just runs out. And think about, for those of you who have trained little kids how to blow their nose, they don't even understand the concept of blowing air through their nostrils at first. You'll put a Kleenex up to their nose and they'll go with their mouth to make a noise like they heard their big brother make or something when he was blowing his nose. So there's all kinds of rituals and customs and traditions associated with things that do occur with us naturally, but those behaviors themselves are not natural. They're not pre-programmed into us. They are a product of the culture that we live in. Lots of examples exist. So there's also a statement on this board that says culture differs from place to place. And definitely we can look at, say, Arkansas all the way across the world to Germany and see a lot of differences. There are some similarities too, but you'll see a lot of differences. Language, for instance, foodways, for instance, rituals, ideas, knowledge, that kind of thing. So there's a whole bunch of things that differ, and there's some things that are the same also. But culture differs from place to place within the same nation sometimes too. Like from north to south, are there different pronunciation patterns, accents, in other words, from people who are from the north compared to people who are from the south? We might be speaking the same language, which is a component of culture, but do we speak it in the same way? And what's the perception about the way we pronounce certain words or every word in the language compared to somebody else? So culture differs from place to place. This is a point I really need to drive home, because this value-free goal that we have to try to take our personal opinions, our personal feelings, and our personal beliefs out of our analysis, that is not easy. We sometimes feel like culture comes naturally to us when it doesn't. And since culture differs from place to place, we are probably going to encounter some issues in which people are very different from us, and we have a tendency, or we could have a tendency, to judge them harshly or to try to prohibit them from being able to live their lives the way they see fit because of our comparison between their lifestyle and ours. Okay, so I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I've got the definition for the word I'm hinting at. I've got it on the board already, so you can see it over here on the left-hand column of the screen. The word is, there's a problem associated with being value-free, and all of us have to deal with this problem. The word is called ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is the tendency that everybody has to judge other cultural ways using our own cultural ways as the standard, like the starting point. This can happen on the micro scale, with people discriminating against each other or treating people unfairly or having, problems with the sexes or something. We can have ethnocentric feelings and actions on the micro scale, but it can happen on the macro scale too. If there's enough muscle behind an attitude, say from the government, from this government to that government, or this religion to that religion, people go to war for reasons that they don't agree upon, and it's usually the source for those kinds of things is usually ethnocentrism. But just like value-free is not easy to be, ethnocentrism is not only bad, or I should say it's not all bad. The examples I've given you so far make it sound pretty bad, but ethnocentrism we have to be careful with because it is the primary reason why we feel loyalty or respect or faith in a belief system. So, or patriotism to our country, or loyalty to your football team or something. So ethnocentrism is the tendency that we have to develop these loyalties and feel this close kinship or allegiance to certain things, like the country or the military or our sports teams or the faith community that we belong to. The reason we're able to stick to a faith or to have patriotic feelings is because of ethnocentrism. And I think most people would probably say that that's a positive side to ethnocentrism. So we have another problem. I have identified ethnocentrism here as one of the major issues you're going to have to be aware of in order to try to work toward this value-free goal. But ethnocentrism has a positive side and a negative side too. So you've got this problem of trying to evaluate when is my ethnocentrism taking me to a good point and when is my ethnocentrism taking me to a negative point. And so it's that ability, or that, not ability, it's the tendency to judge others by using yourself as a comparison. That's when the bad side of ethnocentrism can come out. Because if I judge you harshly, I could treat you differently than I treat other people who have greater similarity to me than you do. And that's not value-free. So that's a problem. On the flip side, we have this other thing on the right-hand side of the screen, and it's a potential solution to ethnocentrism. Notice I say a potential solution, because it's only a possible suggestion as to how to help yourself get over ethnocentric tendencies that you might have and work toward that value-free goal. But again, it's not easy. So cultural relativism is the potential solution I'm talking about, and it is the concept, it's a research model, really, where you try to understand a person's point of view, not from the point of view of your own history and background and beliefs, etc., but from the history and backgrounds and beliefs of that particular culture. So, basically, cultural relativism is attempting to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and see things from their point of view. And when you do that, it's only just another short little step forward to be able to say that their culture is valid and good and fine for them, and I don't need to judge it harshly. So cultural relativism is really, it's a research technique where you are trying your best to interpret actions, behaviors, society, human interaction, all of the things that we systematically study in sociology. You're trying to not be judgmental of differences between you and the people or groups that you're studying, but try to get rid of your value judgments, be very objective, and realize that everyone's culture has significance and value that helps you toward this value-free goal. But let me not stop there, because just like ethnocentrism had its good sides, not just its bad sides, cultural relativism has its bad side. It's not all good. People debate often about whether you can take cultural relativism too far. Are there times in different cultures where human rights are violated, for instance, because that's just the cultural way. That's the tradition. That is the idea, the belief, the customs, the rituals. Those are the rituals for that culture, and we need to just not judge them for that. So is it possible, for instance, if there's a culture that arranges marriages for children when they are 6 and 7 years old? This exists today and was actually much more common in the past, but there are cultures still today whose parents or grandparents, people in their kinship groups, arrange marriages for 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old kids. They have a ritual, they have a ceremony where they get them married to each other, and there is no choice on the part of the children. So there's a line. I'm not telling you that you should judge that particular example that I gave you as bad, and we should start a campaign immediately to change laws, and we should put people in jail if they try to do this. I'm not suggesting that any of those things are the solutions to that issue. But I hope that that particular example proves the point that we have to stop using cultural relativism at a certain point so that we don't cross the line between what's okay and what's a violation of human rights. And that's a fuzzy line, and I'm not here to tell you where that line is, but that's the negative side of cultural relativism. So I've given you a lot of information today. I'm not really sure that I've answered any questions other than maybe the basic definition of culture, because we can define what culture is, but it's so different from place to place that the knowledge about how to use something, or ideas about what the future is, or rituals surrounding a life event or something, even the material objects like a fork and a spoon compared to chopsticks, those things are culture specific. And so we have to, as sociologists, since we're studying society and human interaction, we're going to be seeing a whole gamut of different behaviors and beliefs and actions. And we have to do our best to remove our own personal thoughts, feelings, and emotions and beliefs from the situation and be as value-free as possible. So you need to kind of have a contest with yourself between now and the end of the semester to try to get better and better and better at this. And when you did that social media aspect of your safe haven baby box activity, I wonder if you can look at it after hearing this discussion that we've had today. I wonder if you can look at the results of that social media component and maybe decide whether people were more ethnocentric or whether they were cultural relativists, whether they had, value-free or value impact in their judgments and in their reactions. So it's something to think about, and we will be talking about it many times over the rest of the semester. And thank you very much. I will see you soon. Bye-bye.